Welcome to Roll Radio. I'm Mike, your host, and today we're speaking with Brady McKenna, a number of different projects across the web3 ecosystem, including StreamTide, a web3 crowdfunding and grants app, District0x, which is an entire network of decentralized apps, host of DappDigest, and importantly for us, minted his Tide social token at the beginning of this year. So with that, welcome, Brady. Thanks for joining.
To tack on to that list of stuff that I do, I actually recently just started with a project called Player Edition as well, that's involving sports and crypto. So you'll see a little bit more of that in the coming months as well. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of nothing. No, just kidding.
I feel like that's probably the best way to enter Web3. In terms of like how you got there, what were you doing before and how did that kind of like skill set lead up to what you're doing now?
If you want to go really far back, it's really funny. Crypto has a wonderful way of transforming someone's life in profound ways. And I'm actually a carpenter as a family trade. When I first got into crypto, I was trying to transition out of carpentry because it's definitely not my passion. It's just a family trade, and it's nice to be able to know how to build your own house. But tech has always been at the forefront of everything I've done. So I dove into just finding any kind of tech job I possibly could. I finally ended up starting to work in my hometown, actually, at a computer shop, which sent me down the rabbit hole of crypto, is just working there and reading tech blog articles and things like that. But I still hadn't quite cared enough to actually get into all of that until I was a coin collector, and Cassatius physical Bitcoins back in the day were the thing that just really grabbed me and sucked me into actually caring about ASICs and mining and actually reading the white paper. So I actually performed music in Second Life to earn Linden dollars and dumped it into a Bitcoin ATM to earn some of my first Bitcoins just to buy one of those coins. And Mike over there at Cassatius physical Bitcoins, he told me I only accept Bitcoin. So I was like, okay. So I grinded away on Second Life as much as I could until I earned enough Bitcoin to buy a couple of the coins. But to carry the story forward, it ended up leading me to driving for Uber in Los Angeles and going to Bitcoin meetups as the next phase of all this. And then finally, I ended up actually starting at Coinbase after going to some of the earlier Bitcoin meetups, and they kind of got wind that I was into education and teaching people and consulting some law firms in LA. And I scored some pretty good gigs pretty early on with some people that were very forward thinking in the legal world. And that led me to Coinbase, where I was on their operations team and did a lot of public help articles, internal training stuff, and slowly transitioned over to their regulatory compliance team after a little while. And that whole like experience of going through the creative arts to earn my first Bitcoin on into Coinbase and really digging in deep and getting paid in Bitcoin for a living and going to compliance, realized compliance wasn't really my thing. And I developed probably a decent little bald spot that might still be there a little bit. And I decided compliance just wasn't really where my passion was. And I decided to dive into dApps and crypto a little bit deeper and just get to know everyone in the industry I possibly could who's building some of my favorite stuff that changes and empowers people on new and interesting levels. And that's why I ended up becoming kind of a jack of all trades. I just was really started in a weird way and progressed with the creative arts, and now I'm kind of coming back full circle to the creative arts with StreamTide and the Tide token.
That origin story almost feels like the opening of Magic Mike, as far as a carpenter who's leading
Yeah,
into the arts and then really finding your passion.
you got to give credit where credit is due. To like, crypto has this way of, like I said, profoundly changing people's lives. And I think Coinbase really did that early on. They Olaf Carlson Wee, one of their first employees, he was a lumberjack before he started at Coinbase. I was a carpenter. I think that's the beauty of crypto, is we really are more of a merit based economy, and that is a profoundly different shift in society that hasn't been around in well, since like 16th and 17th century guilds, which DAOs are basically modern day guilds. So again, we're coming full circle, and crypto's really good about allowing things to come full circle, which is probably the most exciting thing about it all.
Do you think that crypto can hold on to that, or is that establishment mentality going to come in and sort of take over?
I think it's inevitable to shift away from the old guard and how things used to be, because if you look at like massive online courses and free education, like anybody can go to Harvard and Stanford for free. It may not be the exact same experience as if like it traditionally was, with all the mentors and thing and networking opportunities when you're just on your computer at home. But the fact is that's a very different model, and it comes with its own host of problems that I think incentive alignment in crypto solves those problems very directly. I mean, I was at ETH.Denver, and someone had like a massive MOOC, massive online courses alternative built on web3 that had a different way of aligning incentives for education. There was people that were doing it for fitness and meditation, and I feel like taking like, well, Apple Watches and Fitbits and things like that, and taking education and realigning incentives there. I mean, that's really the power that hasn't quite been utilized. And I think the old guard and the establishment is trying to ignore the fact that that is coming, and it isn't quite here yet. And everyone's like, I hope that doesn't work, because that means I will have to actually, embrace this new technology. And that's why you saw people like Andrew Yang actually like cussing during his talk, because he's like, I want you to do it in the real effing world. And like, he's kind of like making a point like, okay, NFTs and games are cool and all, but when is this going to be like I can connect my Fitbit to an app and start earning money, and like maybe have UBI because I'm staying fit, healthy, and educating myself? And I see that as the future economy.
We talk about that so much at Roll in terms of social tokens being this way to take that value of a community and sort of turn it into a digital asset. And once you have that, you can move it around real world as well as through apps and platforms and things like that. Where do you see the social aspect of those tokens and the incentives coming into play?
Again, if you really look at the way people are actually using them, you have a lot of artists that are musicians, graphic artists. Some of them are even just in more of the performance art aspect of things. It allows you to almost shift over like what musicians used to have, a street team, and build that community out. But instead of paying in dollars, you end up getting this new structure that is very much like Ithaca, New York has their own currency called the Ithaca dollar. And it's been like around for a long time, and no one seems to talk about that in crypto, when that is like kind of the template everyone should be modeling their crypto communities after, because it's been successful and it keeps currency in the community. It aligns incentives to have a locally very robust economy that is very resilient in times of crisis. I believe in 2008 and 2009 here in the States, Ithaca, New York actually was thriving with their local currency. I think crypto is lending to that same thing, but we're going to see it traverse to the online world. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a monetary value. It can be a purely social token. Look at it from this perspective. People are stuck on Twitch. My community could vote for me to leave Twitch right now, and I could export my community, just leave Twitch with my community, move to another platform, and continue doing the exact same thing I'm doing on Twitch elsewhere. It just allows you to permissionlessly align incentives in a lot more creative ways than we have traditionally.
There's value and there are incentives. And I think when we hear those words, we often think about it in terms of, the dollar. You can create that within the community, like in the sense of that Ithaca dollar, where it's reinforcing the community. It's not trying to replace the dollar, but it acts in concert with it. So like when something happens to the dollar, you then can rely more on the Ithaca dollar. It's always there as sort of this base level connection between all the different nodes in that network, which is really powerful.
Kind of like a social safety net, but on a true social level, not necessarily like a traditional like UBI, big think crazy level. A lot of social experiments don't work on the grand scheme of things. And when you shift your thinking to more local, smaller community based things, it is more about reputation. And that token doesn't even necessarily have to have a monetary value. On my stream, I always tell people you should really have not an expectation of profit with every cryptocurrency, because a lot of times you're just trying to build that base layer. Like I said, like the 16th and 17th century guilds, they had their local currencies, they had their own monetary system within that community, and it wasn't necessarily exactly transferable to the real world in dollars and one for one. But it's kind of cool that crypto does allow, like at the click of a button, to actually enable that as well. So it's the best of programmable money.
Yeah, that idea of the rage quit is a concept that I really appreciate. I think it sounds very dramatic, but just that idea that at any point you can choose to leave and you can exit with the value that you've sort of accumulated, and it's up to you. You're not beholden to that. Like you were saying about moving from platform to platform and the reset of every user account with their likes, their follows, all their interactions, their points, everything gets reset back to zero. So if I'm your biggest fan and you change platforms, now I start out, there's no record of that, in the past. And so even just taking the point value system and being able to export that, that's what we talk about in terms of this. You are now your own platform in that sense, and you get to choose these other services based on what serves you in the community, as opposed to being trapped within them, which is pretty powerful, because now the platforms have to be very aware that they're on the hook. They can't just rely on the fact that they've trapped these people into their platform and they're going to be there forever.
Yeah, I think a lot of the platforms really rely on that. Like that's their safety net, is like, oh, well, you better not leave, because if you do, you have to start over. And they almost use that as the carrot on the stick. On the topic of rage quitting, there's one thing that I think is important for a social token when it comes to providing liquidity. And it's not about yield farming. It's not about number go up. It's not about any of that. It's about the rage quit. And it allows people to have that exit from your community. Let's say people do come to my stream, and just like playing a video game for years, if you have no exit other than leaving with nothing, and you're just like, well, cool, I brought a bunch of value to this community, left, and I have nothing to show for it. My time and money is gone because I even donated to that community. This kind of changes that relationship, because let's say a role token has liquidity. Let's say the people providing liquidity are doing it purely as a form of patronage, the ultimate form of patronage, because providing liquidity is creating the rage quit function for any social token. And someone can be like, okay, well, if as a liquidity provider, you need to understand that you're basically being exit liquidity for people who are angry and want to leave. So you need to tell people that if you're providing liquidity for a social token, it's the ultimate form of patronage. It validates your community. It offers the rage quit function. And like, you're not telling people, oh, you're going to be rich because you have this token. It's like, no, the token is usable for that creator's time. And if I hold it, I might even get voting rights if they launch a snapshot to decide to vote to make Brady leave Twitch, or how he's, you know what, I've donated a lot of money to him, and he was kind enough to, I am doing this by the way, pile up all the money into a multi-sig vault for the stream. And that way people can actually use actual governance on a real world level, because it's, a lot of people can talk about governance, but what does it actually look like when you put your money as a Twitch streamer into a multi-sig vault and say, you know what, all the snapshot voters, you get to decide on what to do with this. And if it doesn't make sense, or this experiment doesn't work, my butt is on the line. It's the money I put forward, maybe some of the airdrops I've collected while teaching people how to collect airdrops on stream, tips and donations, to really show people that you're aligning your incentives correctly.
How much of what you're doing do you consider an experiment versus trying to develop best practices that other people can follow? Like, where's that line? How much of it is just, I don't know, versus I really want it to be a certain way?
I would like to say 100% of it is all experimentation, because let's face it, crypto is one massive experiment. I have a little more experience than the average person with screwing up and figuring out how things work and don't work, and watching crypto slowly march forward to something usable. Like I feel like actually usable in the real world, which is very apparent with seeing ETH.Denver blow up like it has. And Elon Musk's brother was speaking at the event, Kimball Musk launching the big green DAO, and Andrew Yang talking about launching a DAO for lobbying efforts for Web3. And you have like it's just amazing watching the progress. And I feel like there are best practices, but I always like to err on the side of caution and say 100% of it is an experiment. And that's why I always tell people, earn it, don't buy it. So this should be something that everyone says to anyone who's welcoming them to crypto. Don't tell them, go buy this NFT, go buy this token, go buy this, go buy that. Contribute to people and communities you really care about. And it doesn't matter if it's an experiment, because it's probably going to benefit you in some way, because that's the whole point.
If you could kind of sum up some of the bigger themes or maybe the differences, like what was different this year than in previous years, and what kind of stuck out as like, oh, something's happening that wasn't happening before?
I know NFTs are still like in the general public's eye, and that's what they think of with crypto is number go up and NFTs and all this stuff. And I think ETH.Denver has done a better job than most events and most communities at really drilling home the point that it's more than that. They understood what using crypto and DAOs for real world applications looks like when you see Kimball Musk saying, I'm going to launch the big green DAO, and Andrew Yang launching a lobbying DAO. And you have dApps that are addressing things like universal basic income and giving people like Fitbit apps connected to ways to earn. And so what changed? You can go to ETH.Denver, and any negative comment or nonsensical propaganda that you have to say about crypto is completely irrelevant after talking to people even for 5 minutes in any room, or listening to any talk even for just 10 minutes.
Someone was describing it to me, and I really liked this, as it won't actually be exciting until it's boring.
Yeah.
Meaning once the technology aspects of it that is incredibly exciting right now, but only to a certain subset, once all of that gets pushed down into the boring layer, the way we think about FTP or HTTP or any of these other internet protocols, once all that's invisible, then it will be exciting.
Yep. Then we'll all be the old people that no one wants to listen to, talking about algorithms and blockchains and consensus layers, and everyone's just gonna be like, "What are you even talking about? You're just old, Dad." And I'm gonna be like, "Okay, fine. I'm glad I cleaned up the world for you a little bit, so it's just a little less messy. I'm boring. You're better off. Mission accomplished." That's really my goal to as well with the Tide token, is I want to see, like, there's a lot of talk about creating self-sustaining ecosystems and DAOs that function without the founders' input, and they can step away and it continues forward. And it's like, when you're trying to raise money for X, it doesn't really align with the reality of trying to build a self-sustaining ecosystem. There's a lot of square peg round hole issues that just don't work. And I feel like what I'm doing on Twitch is something I want a lot of people to steal as a template, because I want everyone to go, okay, well, he's a Twitch streamer. He put his own money into the pool and said, all right, like, that's what this looks like. I'm not asking for your money. I'm putting my money here and saying, let's see how to make this a self-sustaining ecosystem. And I'm letting go of the steering wheel. Better steer it. Let's see what happens. If you crash it, my money's gone, and so is yours, because it could be yours if you actually participate in some meaningful, like, incentive alignment. And I'm putting it up there for people to create bounties, which is a great way to get a Twitch community rolling, because we haven't really been able to do that without PayPal till now. And PayPal is usually how you pay moderators and pay people to make your swag store, or pay people to do your Twitch design, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like your street team, like I said. And now that we can kind of get the incumbents out of the equation and just interact with people on a very personal, person-to-person level, that really changes the dynamic in a way that allows you to get rid of these square peg round hole problems.
That level of experimentation, there's no risk to you except that this project might fail. There is no failure. There is only test the hypothesis and learn in either direction. I really liked what you were saying too, in terms of it's like much better and healthier to have 1,000 of these small villages than it is to have one giant platform, or something that rules them all, because each one can focus on what it wants to do. And so in terms of social tokens, there's not a singular use case for social tokens. It is a technology that a lot of people can adapt to their needs in these different ways.
We're going to see some interesting things now that we're getting the attention of some of the incumbents and the old guard. I am always excited to see a platform do something like Twitter adding NFT profiles, but at the same time, they're charging everyone to allow you to do it. And it's like, you always see it, but then there's always like this give and take, and it's not as open, and it feels kind of gross when you do see it. And I feel like we're going to have to just have some actual crypto native platforms.
Going forward, thinking about if people are listening to this and they come and start watching your stream and want to get involved and follow along, is it kind of for everyone what you're doing? Do you think it's kind of for a specific subset? How do you view kind of the ideal Tide token holder?
Because I've issued this token, it can really be anyone, because if they're coming to my stream, obviously I have a very specific demographic of people who are a little newer to crypto, people who don't know where to start and need a little bit of guidance with no BS from someone who's been in the industry and seen it all and learned from all my failures. And you can like ask me anything for free.
You have a deep enthusiasm for kind of the entire space, but you're never hyping anything. In fact, if anything, you're skeptical. And I feel like you bring this strange balance of enthusiastic skepticism to the space that it's an honest portrayal, instead of trying to just say, oh, up, 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 up. It's like, no, let's just look at what's happening. It's interesting enough on its own. We don't have to hype it.
That's the thing. I actually look at the charts at the beginning of my stream, but people who are asking what to buy hate it. Every time they're like, I was hoping you'd tell me when to buy and what to buy. And I'm like, don't buy anything, earn it, don't buy it. And if you do have some, it could go this way, it could go this way. I don't know. I know one thing for sure, it's going up or down. That's my philosophy for the whole stream, is just tell people it's going up or down. And that's with everything. Be skeptical, understand it's all an experiment and can blow up in your face.
Where can people find you? When do you stream? Where do you stream? Give us just the basics as we close out here.
I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can follow me there. But if you Google Brady McKenna, all over the internet, I have made sure my presence is well known. But on Twitch, if you want to catch me, it's every week, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And everyone's welcome to join there as well. I'm very responsive and I love chatting about crypto and teaching new people about crypto.
Thanks so much, Brady. I really appreciate you taking the time, having your perspective on this. It's a wide angle lens because of all of the different things you've touched, but also able to kind of go deeply into this stuff based on all the experiences that you've had. I'll encourage everyone to join me in following over to the Tide community call. We'll see you over there.